order is whatever is material. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and righteousness, all these material things will be added, right? You can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and mammon, which is material. You can't be submissive to material things and Elohim. You can't be submissive to material things, because as long as you are submissive to material things, you remain material. But when you are submissive to Elohim, then you become Elohim. Can you see this? Can you see what I'm saying here? Hello. Can you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
I bet you can. You don't know what I say. As long as, I can repeat this one. As long as we think material and submit to material things, we remain material. And thus chaotic. But the moment that our intent is to become what we were created to be, then we begin to become order as opposed to chaos.
As long as you look at anything as material, you are living a false reality automatically, just because, well, if you look at it from a science perspective, there is no such thing as any solid object, period. It just does not exist.
It doesn't happen.
It's only, that's what we perceived it as. So if we were small enough, for example, we could see electrons and atoms and things moving around, if we could shrink ourselves to that point. So to live in the spiritual, regardless, is to be living in, I guess you would say, a pre-manufactured world by yourself. It's something that you created. As a child walks around and you see them, they're like in like a little fantasy land or whatever, which we know that there's some significance in that now. But using their imagination, basically, with what we see as reality, the only thing we're doing is using our imagination to create and say that we see things and things like that.
And that's this is the funny part about it. There's no such thing as a human. We create that illusion. Therefore, Elohim also create the illusion. If we are Elohim, and nothing comes into being without Elohim, right? Without God, right? We create that. We create this illusion of human. There's no such thing as a human. And if you look at Isaiah, it says that I create light and darkness. I create enlightenment and chaos. So we are the ones who bring the material to fruition, simply by our thoughts. And to go further with what you were saying, the only reason we can't walk through this wall is because we have positive and negative atoms, and they attract each other. But if we had neutrinos, which is neutral, we could walk through that wall. And we do have neutrinos, just not enough to overcome that.
And then additionally, as we look at ourselves as being separate from one another, we've already discussed and we know how our thoughts are connected to one another, but we just cannot physically see those connections to one another with our physical or material eyes. So as you make a decision or you have a certain thought in your head and you're thinking that came from yourself, no, you're actually influenced from some standpoint, whether you reject the thought or you accept the thought. There are other thoughts that you're actually picking up on when certain people walk in the rooms or they're in your presence and things like that. When you are listening to someone speak and they're grasping for the word, or is hundreds of words that they could say, and you automatically say the word, and it's as if you're telling them the word, and they say the word. It's different little things.
We
like
do it
that.
all the time.
Yeah, you just don't see it or recognize it because you haven't used our scientific method of having concrete evidence to prove to yourself that that's actually what's taking place.
So God is the one who brings all this into play, and I mean the chaos. the chaos consists of our believing that we are human. Example. The idea that I have this iPad in front of me, the camera in front of you, the idea of these things project that materialism is real. Because from a spiritual perspective, the spiritual man, the spiritual ish, knows all things. That does not mean that they just know what's in the scriptures, that all things. So we are capable of doing any kind of search or recalling anything that's ever been put in the universe without Google. We're capable of that. And there are times when we look at things, primarily scripture, and we see what it means and without having to do the research. Then when we check ourselves and do the research, we see it's exactly the same thing. That's an example of us, of our capabilities to be able to do that. We are capable of being every place at the same time, but yet no place at all. We have that capability. But because we are so entrenched in this illusion of being of material, of being human, those traits are suppressed. I mean, we get excited when someone, you call them a clairvoyant, when someone sees stuff, man. I could see some stuff. We get a card where I can see some stuff printed on it. You get that card, put your name on it, put it on the bottom. I can see stuff. That's prophet, apostle. Isn't that what it is? So just because, when you are able to see, it simply means that the curtain is pulled back. And the Father has allowed us to see an inkling of what's available to us at all times. And when someone looks into your face and talks about your life, it's the Father saying, these are some things I want you to check out. Only thing he's doing is putting into play a belief by virtue of giving us examples of what we are capable of. That's why, a few years ago, you had dramatic healings. You had dramatic prophecy concerning people's lives. That was telling us our capabilities. Now, you can see these things and not be seeking the light. You can see these things and be seeking to increase the chaos, the darkness. There are people who do that. They can see other things, but they don't see them for the right reason. And I believe that the thing that we call prophetic utterances were allowed so that we would seek greater light as opposed to getting stuck at speaking in tongues or seeing in somebody's life. I do not believe that the intent of it was for me to look in Vermeil or Audra's eyes and tell them about their life. I don't believe that. I believe that everything that we see is our looking into the eyes of mankind. And it relates to all men. It relates to everyone. Can you see that?
All men. All men.
Not men in terms of genetic.
Not all men.
All men. A-L-L men. I said all men.
I don't know.
Okay. I said all men. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't mean that. All men. Now, if that is the case, then when I look in your face and see something, you are representative of all mankind who's experiencing what I see. Can you see that? Question? You look like you got a question. Okay. So, if we are Elohim, and we are, nothing came into existence without us. So, in us is life. And the life itself is light to everyone. Can you see that? And the darkness does not understand or does not comprehend the light. It cannot take hold of the light. Darkness cannot hold on to the light. Why? Because darkness begets darkness. Light begets light. So the objective is to understand that we really don't see light. Did I talk about that once? You see what light shows you? The objects.
You see what part of the light spectrum that is not absorbed by that particular object.
Right.
That's what. So you see what's being bounced off them. So you see something that's actually white. That's a whole bunch of different colors that's coming off as white. But like that wall is blue, so that wall is absorbing all light spectrum with the acceptance of that color that you see. It
Right,
didn't
gotcha.
absorb that. It rejected it.
That's a good term for that. It rejected that one color. That's what it became.
Talking about wear white and black clothing and black getting very hot in the summer. That's because black is absorbing all the color, whereas white is reflecting and repelling all the light more so than that black.
So,
That's interesting.
so
The white is repelling the light.
it is. You want to expound on that?
Well, I mean, when you talk about
Because I see what
the
you.
dark man
Mm-hmm.
and the white man.
Yeah. When you made that statement, I guess our minds went to the same place, the repelling of the light, because that's what's happening with the Enlightenment. They have created their own enlightenment, and we have absorbed the light, all of it. And that is one of the reasons that the idea, the concept of a Caucasian is so resistant, because in order for it, and I'm not talking about in racial terms, I'm talking about in terms of thought and spiritual entities that's represented by these physical bodies. When the light that's being rejected is the light that's coming from those who are beginning to see. And as it's rejected, it's reabsorbed into that man, the chaotic man. And his objective is to change that. So how do you change it? By not allowing the material to dominate you. The material has to become your servant, as opposed to you serving it. That's one of the reasons that it is so imperative that you make money your servant, as opposed to you being money's servant. Because money represents everything in this room. There's absolutely nothing in this room that came in this room without money being spent. Can you see that? So, if you serve money, then you're serving everything that money represents. But if you make money serve you, then everything that exists has to serve you. Because it comes into existence as a result of what? Money. Can you see that? So, how do you make it serve? Well, I'm sorry. What are the results? The result of making it serve you is that everything that you need on this journey comes to you without you having to search for it. When we get ready to go someplace, if the money is not there, I know I'm supposed to be there. It's not a concern of mine. It's never a concern because it happens every single time. Now, why is it? Oh my God! Why is it that the Father does not? And I want to talk about that in a minute too. I don't like that term. Why is it that the Creator does not just give it all to us at one time? The perception of lack keeps you focused on whatever you think your source is. If you get to the point where you don't perceive lack because of your source, then you don't worry about it.
I'm not following.
Okay? If I perceive that I have lack, my focus is on whatever it is that can fulfill that perception of mine. If I feel like...
Whatever you feel that you lack.
Yes.
That's your focus.
That's your focus.
Okay.
Because you want to be fulfilled.
Okay.
But when you understand or accept or embrace the concept that there is no lack, the Lord is my shepherd, therefore there's no lack. When you accept that, then you don't concern yourself with it. Because your focus now is who you are. Your focus is the Creator.
Okay.
And to say that the focus is the Creator is not saying the focus is the created. Whole different thing. Totally different. But we focus on the created as opposed to the Creator. And my reference to the Father thing is that I believe that what Father humanizes, it's an attempt to humanize the Creator. Rather than use terms like, the Creator or Jehovah, we use that word Father. You said, well, Jesus used. No, he didn't. A womb was translated as Father, but it means universe. And it can be either father or mother or both in terms of the natural. But in the spiritual, it is the universe or the source of everything that is. That's what it actually should be translated as. So when we see that, when we believe that, then we go through this journey realizing that every step we take is another step that allows us to see a greater light. And every obstacle that's in our pathway is actually a stepping stone to guide us along this way. And all the conflict that we see in other people, the things that they are going through, it gives us an opportunity to express love and kindness. Even if you don't say anything, you can express love and kindness. As opposed to in your head thinking something disparagingly about that situation, person, or whatever. You brought this on yourself. How many times have you heard that? You created your own bed, now lay in it. How many of you heard that? So when those terms are used, they should not be used in a negative way. You made your bed, yes, but you don't have to lay in it. You don't have to stay there. yes, you brought this on yourself, but for what reason? It's always for enlightenment. And that in itself helps people burden be a little bit lighter.
That's just hate then, right? For you to even say that, you made your bed, not lying in it. That's the hate part, isn't it? Second part, the latter.
That's the barrier. When you filter it. Hate filters.
But I mean, for me to want you to lie in it would mean it's something I hate, as in something you might have done to create that situation, or
That's using hate the way we use it. What you use it.
mm,
Well, the spirit, when we look at hate from a spiritual perspective, it is you filtering through your biases, your prejudice, and seeing the person for who they are.
I mean,
But if I
saying
see them as creating their own bed and telling me to lay in it, then I'm actually not. I'm looking at them as being less than me. You see? But if I hate, then I'm filtering. Hate needs to filter out. So we have, and I know it's hard to wrap your mind around, because when I first saw this, it was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around hate meaning something different than what I thought it meant. Because we were brought up, you do not use that word hate. That's too strong a word to use. You see? Have you heard that?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but Jesus used it. When he said that if you're going to come to him, you have to hate your father and mother. Didn't he use that? He used it. So if Jesus used it, then it can't carry negative connotations. It has to have a positive meaning. And the root, the funny thing about it is, it means to filter, but guess what the root of it means? I'm sorry. Guess what the derivation of it, of his root? It comes from the same root as moon in the Aramaic and Hebrew. Same root as moon, M-O-O-N.
Oh.
So what does the moon do? It filters. When the ocean, bring the tides in, it filters.
Cycle.
You have women's cycle, it filters, because that's filtering. Yeah, it does. It filters them, and then you get mad at your cycle, and be hurting and cramping and stuff. But anyway, but where does it filter? The ocean, the tides come upon the beaches, the sand. So it filters the sand. I mean, through the sand. Look at all the stuff you find on the beach.
That's right. I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a question. Yeah.
It's the same thing as a well in the ground.
Yeah.
The
That's
water.
it. That's
The
right.
water coming
It
through
filters.
that.
It filters.
Exactly.
I mean, you have these pristine beaches. That's because before you get up in the morning, they go out there and clean up all that stuff. Any question?
I do. Storms then, they filter,
They do filter, but they also create chaos.
but that's a form of filtering, isn't it?
It's confusion, though.
But
Yeah,
isn't that our opportunity to filter through that chaos?
it's our with the storm. The storm is
You said when it brings chaos, is that not our opportunity?
Yes, it is. Yes,
To filter
to
through that?
filter through that. Yes, the storm is going up the coast now. Look at how far it stays away from us. You see? Huh? I'm serious. I mean, look at how far it stays away. And that's something that we have to deal with, in the coming days. So, let's face it. If hurricane rain goes over Manhattan, it could do untold, it could be disastrous because it's below sea level. And it's impossible to evacuate all the people who are in Manhattan. It's not going to happen. So that's something we need to deal with. And that's another thing about beginning. When we recognize that we have the capability of dealing with storms and the natural storms, at that point we're at beginning. Returning to beginning is not necessarily a meditative thing. Returning to beginning is a state of mind, a state of being, a state of existence. If you can see the light in everything, then you are at beginning. If you reach out to change the course of things or to help people get through things, regardless of how they feel about you, regardless of what they think about you, you are at beginning. You cannot do the things that Jesus did unless you are where he is. That's at beginning. Because everything is at beginning. And out of beginning came everything. Question. Okay. If there are no, Janice.
Can you briefly explain why beginning is such a good place for us to be?
Okay, you heard us say briefly, right?
Well, I mean,
No,
I'm
messing with
sorry.
you.
I
I'm
just,
just
because I
messing
know
with
there are
you.
people who,
Yeah.
who could be listening who have no idea why beginning is so important.
Okay, the reason beginning is so important is because beginning is the spiritual womb out of which everything came. Because in the scriptures, in the first chapter of Genesis, it says, Bereshit bara Elohim. Out of beginning came Elohim. So beginning created Elohim is what it says literally. So from the womb of beginning came Elohim. And right here John is saying that not only was Elohim in the womb of beginning, but the seed was also, the word was also. And if the seed was in beginning, then beginning must be feminine, which means it's a womb. So when we talk about being at that place of beginning, we are talking about being at the spiritual, being in a spiritual state where we recognize that everything that we desire to create comes from that point, that place where we are. If you say I'm in a bad place, then what comes out of that bad place are bad things. Depression, anger, etc. I'm in a good place. What comes out of that place are good things. So beginning is talking about your state of being more than anything else. Recognizing your state of being. Does that help? Can you see that? Or is that clear enough? If not, keep asking the question.
I think we could simplify it a little more.
Go and simplify it. I'm good with that.
You tricked her.
Yeah, you did.
No, I mean, I really wanted
No,
to.
I mean, I was thinking about it just from the perspective that beginning is before the separation, before we created the existence that we currently live. It's even before Eden and that experience there.
Yes. So that's okay. That's the essence of what being in this world but not of this world means. That's the essence of it. Because being in this world but not of the world, then you have to be of something else. And he did not say of another world. So we must be of beginning, of the spiritual. So, but we are still in this world. What that means is you can be at beginning and still be in this bodily form. Of this world. I mean, in this world, but not of this world.
To me, it's almost like, I think of it kind of like a day. If spiritual was the day, we have bad moments in a day as opposed to saying we have bad days. We tend to think that because we did something wrong in a moment of that day, the whole day is bad. When the truth is, it's just that moment. We're still surrounded by the Spirit where we can go in and out and say, I had a bad moment versus I had a bad day. It's kind of how I think.
Go ahead.
That clarifies it.
I'm just gonna cause more confusion.
But that's normal for you. That's par for the course. Go ahead.
So, what we were talking about, with tolerance earlier today,
Mhm.
combined with, beginning being a womb, and there being a creation, and there being a birth, etc. And to say that this is bad, or I'm having a bad day, or I'm having a bad moment, is the equivalent of tolerating what you created, or was created from the womb, from a certain extent.
Okay.
Versus when we were talking about the embracing part, it's the same exact thing, except you go from a huge micro to a gigantic macro with the same exact concept that is actually taking place.
Okay.
Do I
can see
need to
that.
go further? I don't know if I
I don't
did a
know, I
good
can
job
see that.
explaining it.
You talking?
I'm just talking. I'm not
Well,
talking.
you're right, I got more massively confused, I think.
I wasn't trying to confuse. But I just mean, the beginning is a womb, there's a birth. You say, I had a bad day, or I'm in a bad mood, or I'm in a bad space, or whatever. You're actually basically saying that part of that birth, of that creation, think about if you have a child or whatever. I hate this sin of this child, but this is my child, so I still love my child. When all this is if you embrace it instead, and what I mean by embrace it, underlying embrace means to accept with love and not accept out of necessity, so to speak, kind of.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
So if you embrace what is actually taking place, you are, I don't want to say deifying it, because deifying it would mean that you're making the deity. You're not doing the opposite, which is taking the deity out of it. And because you acknowledge it, that in itself makes it powerful, and that makes it good. That makes you, if it's perceived as a problem or was a crutch or anything, then you just turned that into a stepping stone. That thing that tripped you up, it tripped you up because it took you to another level, and you couldn't keep running on that same plane that you were on, etc.
Now, let's harken back to the first part you said about the micro and the macro. All he did was explain the Big Bang Theory. When he said that it came from a micro to a huge macro, right? It is no different than the B stands for beginning. It is no different than beginning starting with whatever is right here. That's the womb, right? And as it comes out, it spreads into the macro exponentially. But the origin of beginning is far greater than that. There are no limits to where it comes from. You see what I'm talking about? So there is a natural macro, but there is also a spiritual macro that engulfs everything that is. So when we talk about beginning, we're talking about that place where wisdom, that place where what we call revelation comes from. I'll tell you another thing too. When you look at the archangel, we were told that that's the chief angel. But arch means origin or beginning. So it's the message of the beginning. That's what an angel is. If the angel is the message of beginning. So it doesn't. So when we look at beginning, it encompasses a lot of things that we take for granted or that we don't even notice. The sands that we have, the way you treat someone is representative of beginning. If I were to sit here and if I were to sit here and be misogynistic and not let women speak, then that in itself says that I'm not at beginning. I'm at the beginning that I created. Or if I sit here and I make everyone who asks a question feel like they're just big, then I'm not at beginning. I'm at the beginning that I created. And because I created that beginning, every beginning has a seed. And because I created that beginning, that seed is going to be birthed if I don't do something about it. But when I come to you and say, I'm sorry, I apologize for what happened, that's doing something about it. That's creating a new beginning. Can you see that? If you're sincere, that's what's happening. That's another form of repentance. Can you see that? So that is the reason it is so dangerous to carry a grudge. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous to carry anger or disappointment. It's very dangerous. And the reason it's dangerous is not only because of the toll that it takes on your body. That's not it. Because the real danger is it stops you in your tracks. And if you're not careful, you begin to retrogress. Don't make me cuss you out. I used to do that. You know what I'm saying? If you're not careful, you'll retrogress. So you have to be cognizant of who you are, what you say, how you respond to things, all the time. Right now, if you were to push the wrong button, if I were to get angry, in a few minutes it's gone. And in most cases, I can't even remember what I was angry about. But that's how I have intentionally developed me. I can't do you like that. I can't do anyone in this room like that. You have to do it for yourself. And when I ask the question, how many of you would like to be there? Where you don't carry aggression, you don't carry anger, you don't carry disappointment. And when it happens, it may be there for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, but it's gone. How many of you would like to be like that? I'm serious. Okay? If you want to be like that, now you made a commitment, right? That's your intent, right? Now, look for people to make you angry in the coming week. You're going to be faced with situations of anger and disappointment.
Amen. Don't I remember that about patience.
You see what I'm talking about? The only way that can be developed, birth, I should say birth. The only way it can be birthed is that the seed is planted. When the seed of anger is planted, overcome that with light or engulf that in light and change the course of it. It's like when he was reviled, he reviled them not again. It's saying that when they talked bad about him, he didn't talk bad back to them. He didn't cuss them out. He didn't go off on them. There are things that's going to happen to you, and the things that are going to happen to you are your pet peeves. The things that you dislike the most are the things that's going to happen. So be ready for it. Okay? Any questions? I want to say this before we finish. I'm going to look further into this first chapter because I believe that this first chapter that was put in here was accidentally put in because it is very mystic in its nature, and it actually is reflective of Genesis. It's very reflective of Genesis. regardless of who wrote it, because there are some questions about who wrote all of it. It doesn't matter. Okay,
I have one question
okay.
about this chapter. In my Bible, they have the title as the deity of Jesus Christ. But you're basically saying it's not talking about Jesus, it's talking about all of us.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what I'm saying. From the perspective of Elohim being plural. And everywhere you see it is plural. So either if it is the inspired word of the Creator, and I believe it is, then he would have made that error. Not consistently. So it's a consistent plurality. Okay. You can end the recording but not the broadcast.